For basically our entire lives, we've been taught that focusing is a matter of sheer willpower. This grueling, exhausting battle of the mind where you just have to try harder. But what if we've been looking at it completely wrong? What if focus isn't about force at all, but rather a strategic skill of selection? Today, in this explainer, we're going to explore a mental model called signal over noise, and it is going to fundamentally shift how you understand your own attention.
So let's start with a question. Why do we lose focus, even when we deeply, genuinely care about what we're doing? It's a really strange paradox of modern life, isn't it? Our minds can feel completely overwhelmed, incredibly busy, and just entirely exhausted before we've even started doing any meaningful work. You sit down at your desk to focus, and your brain is already tired.
To understand exactly why this happens, I want you to imagine standing in a bustling, incredibly crowded marketplace. You're surrounded by flashing, competing signs, overlapping voices just shouting for your business, and constant, chaotic movement everywhere you look. Now, nothing is physically stopping you from walking forward to your destination, right? But your attention is continually hijacked. Well, this is exactly what the inside of your mind looks like on a daily basis. The problem isn't a lack of effort on your part. It's an environment of competing signals.
Which brings us to a massive realization. Focus is not the raw, muscular force you use to concentrate. It is absolutely not a moral test of your discipline. Rather, focus is the strategic skill of choosing what actually deserves your mind at any given moment. Once you stop viewing focus as a willpower problem and start seeing it as a selection problem, the chaos suddenly stops feeling so mysterious. Your mind isn't broken, it's simply overloaded. Now, focus is just a selection problem. Then to stop treating every single interruption, ping, and random thought as equal, we have to start by learning what we are actually choosing between. We have to learn how to weigh the options sitting right in front of us by asking one absolutely vital question. What actually deserves my attention right now?
To answer that, we need to divide the world into two categories. The first is signal. Signal is anything that genuinely helps you decide, act, or understand what to do next. It is information with true, practical value. For example, a text message telling you a meeting time has moved. That is pure signal. It directly changes your plan and improves your next decision. Signal is clear, it's useful, and it's directly relevant to the task in front of you.
The second category is noise. Noise is anything that feels active, urgent, or emotional, but does not actually improve the decision in front of you. Think about seeing a notification that 3 people liked a social media post. Sure, it feels rewarding, it might even trigger a little emotional spike, but it doesn't change your next meaningful action. It simply takes up space in your brain.
And honestly, this is the trap we fall into every single day. Noise often arrives dressed up like signal. It looks incredibly important simply because it's loud, it's recent, or it's emotionally charged. We naturally assume that the loudest voice in the room must be saying the most important thing. But loudness is not meaning. Remember, signal is purely about relevance, whereas noise is just volume.
So why does urgency feel so much more important than clarity? Well, it's because our brains do not naturally rank things by long-term value. Evolution has wired us to rank things by immediacy. We're running this ancient survival system that is constantly scanning for sudden changes, meaning we routinely confuse things that flash, ping, or shout with things that actually matter.
Think of a person standing at a really busy train station. A booming, echoing announcement suddenly blares through the overhead speakers. It instantly grabs their attention, even if it has absolutely nothing to do with their specific train. Meanwhile, the quiet, unmoving platform sign holds the actual signal they need to get home. The human mind behaves exactly like that station, turning instinctively toward whatever is loud, even when the quiet thing is the true guide. This mental overload acts exactly like radio interference. If you try to listen to one radio station while another is bleeding through underneath it, you don't magically get twice the useful information. You just get interference. Your brain is forced to work twice as hard to separate the inputs, and that extra cognitive effort is exactly what's draining your energy before you even start working. A really powerful way to tell them apart on the fly is to observe what the information actually does to you. Signal changes your action. It changes your decisions, your timing, or your next steps. Noise, however, merely manipulates your mood. It makes you feel busy, tense, curious, or behind schedule without producing a single ounce of real progress in the physical world.
This brings us to a profound paradigm shift. What if distraction isn't the root issue at all? If we want to stop feeling constantly overwhelmed, we have to stop asking why we are weak or flawed and instead look deeply at how we allocate the space in our minds.
To do that, we have to separate two concepts that are almost always blurred together: attention and distraction. They are not just opposites, they are actively competing claims on the exact same limited space. Attention is what you deliberately place on something because it truly matters. Distraction is what steals that placement from you before you ever intended to give it away.
So let's say that again. Attention is chosen. Distraction is captured. Treating attention as a limited budget rather than a fleeting mood is completely transformative. Why? Because every single time you place your attention somewhere, you are spending a precious, finite resource. You stop asking, "Do I feel focused?" and you start asking, "Is this input actually worth the attention it's about to consume?"
Imagine your attention as a narrow flashlight beam in a pitch-black room. Wherever you point it, that spot becomes visible, but you cannot illuminate the entire room at once. If you are continually swinging that beam around to illuminate every single random noise and movement in the shadows, you will never fully see the important thing sitting right in front of you. Distraction simply keeps resetting your beam.
Since our evolutionary scanning system naturally reacts to urgency, emotion, and novelty as survival shortcuts, how do we actually navigate the modern world? A Slack notification is not a tiger in the brush. A trending topic on social media is not a true emergency. We need a reliable method to filter out the modern world's endless false alarms. We have to know what matters.
When something tries to pull you away from your focus, you can govern your attention by asking two very simple questions. First, does this input help my current goal? And second, and this is crucial, does this actually need immediate action? Sorting your attention is really about recognizing that something can be incredibly important without being urgent.
Bringing structural clarity to the chaos of our minds means categorizing inputs into three distinct mental piles: act now, keep for later, and let go. Most of our daily mental exhaustion comes from one single mistake: mistakenly putting keep for later items, things that are important but not urgent, into the act now pile. If you only respond to urgency, your life just gets organized by whatever shouts the loudest.
Now, a really common myth is that deep focus means banishing every single distracting thought from your existence. That is literally impossible. Rather than unrealistically trying to fight the wind, imagine your mind as a room with several open windows. Real focus is just the containment strategy of deciding which windows get to stay open right now and which ones get closed for the time being. You notice the breeze, you notice the thought, but you don't have to follow it.
When you pull all of this together, you realize you are not fighting a moral battle. You are not testing the extreme limits of your willpower. You are simply operating a sorting system. You are gently teaching your mind scanning system what actually deserves a response.
People who appear deeply focused, those folks who just seem to effortlessly glide through their work, they are usually not trying harder than you are. They don't have some magical surplus of discipline. They have just learned to filter on purpose. They've mastered the quiet, powerful skill of separating the genuinely useful from the merely loud. They consistently choose signal over noise.
Your attention is your life. It is the raw material of your reality. It is the beam that illuminates your world. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this profound question to reflect on. If attention shapes your life, what deserves more of it tomorrow than it receives today?